Bueno, quiero darles la más cordial bienvenida a este muy importante evento que inaugura la primera Semana Internacional de la Universidad de Chile. Nuestros saludos muy especiales a los miembros del cuerpo diplomático acreditado en nuestro país que hoy nos acompañan, representantes de distintos niveles en las embajadas, autoridades universitarias, colegas académicos, estudiantes, público y muy especialmente a nuestro invitado de honor, el profesor Thomas Schneider, que como ustedes bien saben, tiene a su cargo la dirección ejecutiva de la APRU, la Asociación de Universidades del Anillo del Pacífico, del cual forma parte la Universidad de Chile y particularmente nuestra rectora, quien integra el comité directivo. El profesor Thomas Schneider va a ser presentado por un colega, por un distinguido académico de esta casa, del Instituto de Estudios Internacionales, el profesor Andrés Borges, quien además dirige nuestro programa de magíster en estudios asiáticos. Así que enseguida les voy a dar la palabra a ambos. Y bueno, nada, quiero invitarles a que no solo disfruten mucho de esta muy interesante conferencia que va a tratar de un tema que no podría ser de máxima actualidad, que es cuál es el rol de las universidades en este contexto tan complejo como el que estamos atravesando hoy en día, de cambios tecnológicos, cambios científicos y también cambios geopolíticos muy importantes que están afectando nuestra labor y nuestro rol en tanto instituciones de educación superior. Así que, sin más, y agradeciéndoles nuevamente vuestra presencia, le doy el pase a Andrés Borges para que presente a nuestro invitado. Muchas gracias.
Muy buenos días a todas y todos. Es un verdadero honor participar en esta importante actividad y también darle la bienvenida a esta conferencia organizada por la Dirección de Relaciones Internacionales de la Universidad. En el marco del compromiso por fortalecer el diálogo académico a nivel global y la cooperación universitaria en la cuenca del Pacífico. Para la universidad, esta actividad tiene un valor muy especial, puesto que se enmarca en una estrategia orientada a proyectar el interés de la universidad a nivel académico y científico, y también del país, de Chile, hacia el Asia-Pacífico, que es una zona clave para los intereses nacionales. En ese marco, hoy tenemos el privilegio de recibir al profesor Andreas Schneider, director ejecutivo de la Asociación de Universidades del Pacífico, APRU. Es una red que reúne a 63 universidades de 18 economías del Pacífico y que ha sido el pilar esencial en la promoción de la cooperación académica, la investigación colaborativa y también la proyección de liderazgo universitario en las regiones, que convocan esta cuenca del Pacífico. El profesor Schneider es un académico y líder universitario de destacada trayectoria internacional. Solo voy a presentar un breve resumen de su larga trayectoria. Tiene una carrera que abarca 4 regiones del mundo, América en términos general, Asia, Europa y el Medio Oriente. Estudió en las universidades de Zúrich, Basilea y la École Pratique de Haute Étude en París, y obteniendo su doctorado y la habilitación en egiptología en la Universidad de Basilea. Ha ocupado cargos académicos en instituciones de gran prestigio, entre ellas la Universidad de British de Columbia, la Universidad de Swansea en Gales y también la Universidad de Southern University of Science and Technology en Shenzhen, en China, donde fue el vicerrector asociado de Relaciones Internacionales. Dentro de este marco, lideró procesos de internacionalización en una de las universidades que se focaliza en ciencias y tecnologías, digamos, en este caso, en la cuenca asiática del Pacífico. Su producción académica incluye más de 160 publicaciones, entre ellas 7 libros como autor principal y 7 libros también editados con contribuciones con otros colegas. Y sus trabajos han estado centrados en interconexiones culturales y lingüística en el cercano Oriente, también la historia ambiental de Egipto y la historia de humanidades durante la Alemania nazi. El profesor es también un profundo pensador sobre el papel de las universidades y las redes transnacionales frente a los grandes desafíos contemporáneos. En su conferencia de hoy, titulada Las universidades y las redes transnacionales en tiempos de turbulencia global, nos invitará a reflexionar cómo funcionan estas dinámicas, digamos, en una etapa de múltiples crisis. Les pido que recibamos con un caluroso aplauso al profesor Andreas Schneider. Por favor, profesor, bienvenido.
Thank you so much for the introduction. Can you hear me well? Okay. So first I wanted to say what a pleasure it is to be in this beautiful room here with such an audience. I grew up in the Swiss mountains, so giving a lecture with the view of the Andes Mountains is really exciting for me. I've never lectured in such a beautiful place. Thank you so much for having me here. Dear Alicia, distinguished guests, students, thank you very profoundly for the invitation to address you today at the opening of University of Chile's International Week. I am deeply honored and humbled by the task to speak to the role of transnational university networks in addressing global challenges in times of geopolitical turbulence. At the same time, I feel the burden of speaking about the topic. At this very moment, there are 15 active war zones on our planet and approximately 25 other regions of civil unrest or violence, highlighting the failure of political crisis solving. Many other forms of geopolitical turbulence are widespread. Societies are highly politicized and divided. And higher education is not exempt from such turbulence, with assaults on science and internationalization multiplying, not the least in the United States of America. I wish to call to my rescue and inspiration Pablo Neruda, Chile's poetic beacon and humanitarian advocate. The poet's work as a literary scholar has stated is, I quote, at once a chronicle of tumultuous times and the intimate diary of a nomad, the voyage of awakening to the responsibility of the intellectual to society and to history, end of quote. After relating this arduous voyage in his noble lecture of December 13th, 1971, under the title Towards the Splendid City, Neruda evokes the vision of the splendid city, a future of humanity in justice, dignity, and equality. He concludes, lastly, I wish to say to the people of goodwill, to the workers, to the poets, that the whole future has been expressed in this line by Rimbaud, only with a burning patience can we conquer the splendid city, which will give light, justice, and dignity to all mankind. In this way, the poetry will not have sung in vain. How can university networks pursue the same goal, to conquer the splendid city with a burning patience? How can we make sure that our poetry, the poetry of higher education, will not have sung in vain? I will start with an important modification. I was asked to speak about the role of international university networks, but as you have duly noticed, I prefer the term transnational over the term international. At a time when most geopolitical turbulence occurs among nation states and their claims to territory and resources, calling networks transnational emphasizes their capability to operate outside and to be effective beyond the limitations of nation states or interstate relations. It allows us to prioritize broader humanitarian and planetary issues that also have the potential to unite people and societies in ways international efforts cannot. The current global system of higher education counts tens of thousands of post-secondary institutions of very different caliber and purpose, and hundreds of university networks of different scope and mission. The massive growth and diversification of the sector within the past decades has happened alongside global developments on our planet that have inevitably transformed the framework within which universities and university networks now operate. Within the first quarter of the 21st century, and I remind you, this quarter comes to an end at the end of this year, in December, the world population has increased from less than 6 billion people to 8 billion. In the same period, global life expectancy has increased from 65.42 to 73.16 years. Due to a massive rise in urbanization, now 57% of the global population live in cities. The massive footprint that humans have been leaving on the planet, not the least through climate change, has incentivized some researchers to declare a new era of Earth's history, the Anthropocene. Between 1997 and 2023, to give you one example of that footprint, global carbon emissions have increased from 25.2 to 37.41 billion metric tons annually. During the same period, the decline of wildlife populations has been in excess of 20%. The fourth industrial revolution, and more recently Industry 5.0, have been changing lives at a pace unprecedented in human history. Computing power, new technologies, and artificial intelligence are transforming the ecosystems in which we live and work, from food production and manufacturing to medicine, education, the workplace, and our own personal lives. The omnipresence of mobile phones and social media has changed human interaction. It has also given political and social movements a new dimension of visibility and mobilization. Despite this human shift to virtual communication and the cyberspace, the grounding of humans in their physical space seems to be as fundamental as ever. Wars over territorial, cultural, and religious claims and the massive displacement of people fleeing conflicts are a global reality. The access to or the lack of the most essential resources and rights continues to be a fundamental global problem for hundreds of millions of people. Financial and health crises have left an additional mark on the planet over the past quarter of a century. Inevitably, higher education underwent significant structural transformations too. The post-secondary sector saw important growth and diversification, for example, through the foundation of new universities and the development of polytechnic and professional schools, such as in Chile after 1981. A surge in student numbers led to the massification of higher education in many national economies. The increasing professionalization of universities led to a paradigm shift since the 1980s, whereby the traditional concept of the university as a republic of letters has been challenged by the idea of the university as a corporate entity. Market-driven models compete with endorsements of higher education as a public good. Clearly, the uncontested position of universities within society is no longer a given. However, within the last circa 2 decades, both the acceleration of global change and the public critique of the relevance of universities have had universities embrace corporate social responsibility and sustainable development as additional components of their mission. As a consequence, universities now operate under a new social license, different from earlier periods of their history. This tendency, spurred significantly by the United Nations Framework 2030, the Sustainable Development Goals Framework, declared in 2015, has been mirrored by the establishment of a new type of specialized university alliances, such as the Talloires Network of Engaged Universities, established in 2011. The Talloires Network is a global coalition of 450 university presidents in close to 100 countries who have publicly committed to strengthening the civic roles and the social responsibilities of their institutions. It is the largest international network focused specifically on university civic engagement. Networks of this type prioritize social and environmental issues by contrast with the traditional core areas of research, education, and academic mobility. Making these priorities transnational signals a new historical phase and a new kind of global university engagement. By contrast with conventional partnerships that tend to be defined by geographical and political terms, international collaborations managed by international offices, we witness the emergence of transnational partnerships and maybe at one point the concept of the transnational university. This broad shift of higher education towards civic engagement has also reshaped comprehensive global networks such as the Association of Pacific Rim Universities, APRU, the very consortium I represent here today. Established in 1997, APRU today comprises 63 member universities across 18 economies of the Asia-Pacific. Using this example, I would like to demonstrate how university consortia can address global challenges in times of geopolitical turbulence. I believe they can do so through a threefold ability. First, the ability to amplify the creation of knowledge in research and education. Second, the ability to amplify transnational connectivity as an agent of multilateral diplomacy. And third, the ability to amplify cohesion within a value-based planetary community. I will designate the three areas, this is a good memory aid for you, by the terms meta-university, multi-connector, and macro-community. And you may imagine them as the three vertices of a triangle. Let me first speak about the term meta-university. In 2007, former Massachusetts Institute of Technology President Charles West coined the term meta-university for distributed and decentralized university networks. Such meta-universities would share scholarship, increase access to education, and create societal impact. Recent assessments of this concept have described meta-universities through the lens of a value net, picturing market relationships between the center of the network, the meta-university, and other stakeholders. They have emphasized their role as a catalyst for new systems thinking, integrating different perspectives into a higher, more general level of understanding of complex systems. The Association of Pacific Rim Universities presents the key characteristics of such a meta-university. For one, the combined research power of our 63 member universities translates into 12% of the annual global research output. If we at APRU were treated as a country, we would rank third globally, after China and the United States, in terms of research production. As a transnational platform of collaboration, we co-create knowledge and we advance technological innovation in all fields of human inquiry. Our signature research-informed programs focus on the big challenges of the Pacific in the areas of health, hazards, sustainability, food, biodiversity, and technology. We facilitate research, we train students, and we create policy frameworks through our annual research summits, workshops, competitions, and summer schools. Second, through our member institutions, APRU has a combined enrollment of 2.5 million students and employs more than 200,000 professors, offering through its institutions an estimated, that's really just a guesswork, 10,000 degree programs and maybe 300,000 annual courses. On a network level, APRU offers a comprehensive range of programs, some of them for credit or as a certificate, informed by multiple academic disciplines, including health sciences, natural sciences, the social sciences, and cultural studies. APRU expands access to education through a wide variety of programs. We build professional capacity, and we enhance student engagement and the development of global citizenship. In summary, APRU has the capacity to leverage the vast collective research power, the extensive resources in education and culture, and the profound socio-economic impact of its member institutions towards the further development of higher education and the solution of planetary challenges. And just to give you two examples that we have recently established. One example is funded by the MasterCard Foundation. It is a project called AI and Data Science for Social Impact. And this program supports the training of 1 million data practitioners in Southeast Asia, with a particular focus on data for social impact. Through our big programs on the grand challenges of the Asia-Pacific, such as health or sustainability, we assess training needs in Southeast Asia, and then we roll out open source courses to train students and professionals in social impact science and AI readiness. And a second recent example, we are establishing a network of our university forests, currently about 1,000 square kilometers, which will offer an integrated approach to climate, biodiversity, education, and policy, combining again core areas of our mission: research, education, policy, and social impact. This subnetwork aims to use cutting-edge research infrastructure in unique forest ecosystems across the Pacific Rim to measure carbon flux, to monitor biodiversity, and to explore the interface of forests and human communities in real time. The comparative data collection and analysis will offer unparalleled insights into forest dynamics, support forest conservation, and enhanced management practices. Students will have the opportunity to learn here from a comparative perspective. For example, we are now creating a global forestry course that can be taken by forestry students across the network. The second amplifier, the multi-connector. Transnational university networks fulfill a crucial second objective. By functioning as a multi-connector among universities and between universities and other segments of society, such as the government, NGOs, the corporate sector, they pursue educational diplomacy as a deliberate means to bypass geopolitical tensions. As you know, beyond its past rather narrow political definition and the sphere of interstate relations, diplomacy is nowadays a preserve of multiple actors. It has extended to specialized fields of diplomatic engagement, such as trade diplomacy or climate diplomacy. Over the past 3 decades, APRU has established itself as an important multilateral actor of educational diplomacy, a role embedded in APRU's constitutional mission when we were established in 1997. At our inaugural meeting almost 3 decades ago, J. Stapleton Roy, at the time US Ambassador to Indonesia, after previously serving as US Ambassador to Singapore and China, made the following remarks of unabated relevance. I quote him: Expanding cooperation among Pacific Rim universities is desirable for a variety of educational, cultural, and social reasons. But it is also necessary to help ensure that the accelerated flow of information across and on both sides of the Pacific contributes to knowledge, mutual understanding, and appreciation of our common values. Equally important, such cooperation can reinforce the efforts of diplomats, academicians, the business community, and good citizens everywhere to make the next century, the Pacific century, a peaceful, prosperous, and enlightened one." End of quote. Today, the need for such multilateral diplomacy is even more essential in a world characterized by contrary tendencies of development. On the one hand, the current globe is hyper-connected through trade, finance, modern communication, and a mobility of people unseen in earlier phases of history. The unprecedented and ubiquitous pace of technological development calls into question the very foundations of how life will be lived in the future. Simultaneously, the globe is politically increasingly fragmented. We have witnessed a global diffusion of power to new national and institutional stakeholders, further exacerbated by demographic shifts, by environmental degradation, and socioeconomic inequality, in addition to political and military conflicts. In recent months, to give you one example, the enforced termination of joint US-Chinese institutes by the new US administration and the requests for payments of up to $1 billion for the release of federal funding, such in the cases of Harvard University and UCLA, have been illustrative of political threats to the global mission and the international nature of higher education. APRU's diplomacy appears thus more urgent in 2025 than before. A transnational framework apt to overcome political divisions and to build purpose-based trust is offered by the concept of planetarism. This concept moves beyond the limitations of internationalism by centering on the sustainability of human civilization and the well-being of the entire planet, rather than the interests of sovereign nations. Moving beyond the nation-state as the primary political unit, this framework promotes a new understanding of human interdependence with planetary systems, suggesting that an awareness and a collective responsibility for planetary issues is necessary to address the challenges of the Anthropocene. And APRU's programs have indeed started adopting such a planetary perspective. For example, our 2024 Global Health Conference in Bangkok focused on the topic harmonizing human and planetary health, flagging planetary health as a new transdisciplinary field of research and social movement that addresses the impacts of natural systems on human health and all life on Earth. Transnational connectivity is indispensable in a world that is bound by a common interest in the preservation of our world. Through 16 programs and 41 activities and events in 2024, APRU has engaged more than 6,000 participants from all 63 member universities and their 18 home economies, as well as additional external partners from government agencies, NGOs, and the corporate sector. And I'll just give you an example here from the University of Chile. This past summer, as you all know, I think, the University of Chile hosted one of our key events featuring educational diplomacy, the APRU Undergraduate Leaders Program. Held for the first time in South America, this event convened 72 students from 13 economies. The program's activities, including an international seminar on the future of democracy attended by the President of Chile, Gabriel Boric, and featuring world-renowned speakers such as Nobel Prize laureate Joseph Stiglitz and economist Ha-Joon Chang. This program is entirely about educating a new generation of global leaders, leaders who will champion a visionary future form of leadership that is ethical, collaborative, and transformative. As Rectora de Wes emphasized in her opening address, I quote her, and I'm sorry not to see her here, but you will relate to her the quote, "The world's complex, interconnected challenges cannot be tackled in isolation. They demand cooperation, empathy, and collective intelligence, especially from the new generations who will forge the future. It speaks to the ethical responsibility to act in a global context, to recognize the interconnection of our realities, and to affirm the dignity of every person, regardless of origin, is a shared obligation. We need leaders who understand that global citizenship is not about erasing difference, but about learning to live with them and to lead through them." End of quote by Rectora de Wes, and I would like to thank her very much for organizing and hosting this event here at the university. And the third amplifier, I wanted to single out macro community. Finally, a key purpose of transnational university networks is their power to help form a cohesive global community underpinned by the same values and priorities, a planetary polity. This is particularly true for university networks with a high degree of density per region of the globe, such as APRU in the Asia Pacific. When APRU was established in 1997, this happened purposefully and against the growing profile of the Asia Pacific as a global economic superpower. The Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation, or APEC, had just been founded in 1989 in response to the growing interdependence of Asia Pacific economies and the emergence of regional trade blocs in other parts of the world. The mastermind behind the creation of APRU, Stephen B. Sample, at the time president of the University of Southern California, intended APRU to be, I quote him, analogous to and supportive of the efforts of the Asia Pacific Economic Corporation's leaders to stimulate the creation of a community of Pacific nations. He invoked the social imaginary of such a community as APRU's mission, namely, I quote him again, to help these institutions, our member universities, become more effective contributors to an increasingly integrated Pacific Rim community. As a purpose-driven model community of scholars, administrators, teachers, and students from across the Pacific Ocean, numbering close to 3 million people, APRU is therefore a supporting architect of the Asia-Pacific macro community. We mirror the diversity of the Asia-Pacific through all our activities, to mention only our network on Indigenous and First Nations knowledges, whose presidential champion is Rectora de Wes. We enhance the representation of female leaders through our Asia-Pacific Women in Leadership program. We pursue the search for scientific truth and the fair and equitable implementation of solutions in our research-informed programs on the region's grand challenges: multi-hazards, global health, biodiversity, sustainability, food security, and artificial intelligence. We foster global citizenship, understanding, empathy, and respect for the complexity of the globe and the very different local identities and contexts. Like in each community, civic participation is a key responsibility of global citizenship, one that we build through student programs in leadership, summer schools, and student competitions. May the global community that university networks help build be an inspiration for all of you gathered here at the opening of the International Week of the University of Chile. And this brings me back to Pablo Neruda, who in his Stockholm banquet speech on the evening of receiving the Nobel Prize remarked, I quote him, "We come from far away, from that which is behind us and within us, from different languages, from countries that love one another. We have come from chemistry, from the microscopes, from cybernetics, from algebra, from the barometers, from poetry, like many of you here in the room are supposed to, in order to be assembled here. We come from the darkness of our laboratories to meet a light which honors us and for the moment dazzles us. And Neruda then expresses the hope that, like the darkness of the laboratories leads to scientific illumination, and like the darkness of his earlier life gave way to the dazzling light of Stockholm, the darkness of people in their quest for dignity, to freedom, and to life may also be lighted up. Precisely this is a key responsibility, I believe, of universities and higher education. And let me thus conclude by adopting the appeal that I quoted at the beginning from Pablo Neruda's Nobel Prize lecture to our own work as a global university network. Considering unprecedented global challenges and persistent global turbulence, let me reaffirm here that only with a burning patience can we conquer the splendid city which will give light, justice, and dignity to all humans. Thank you so much.
Muchas gracias, profesor Schneider, por esta conferencia tan inspiradora. Su reflexión nos recuerda que las universidades no son únicamente lugares de estudio, sino instituciones con responsabilidad social y global, capaces de articular conocimiento, diplomacia y sobre todo compromiso para problemas comunes, estos problemas que están, digamos, a nivel global y que son transfronterizos. Entonces, en ese sentido, la idea de la universidad como meta-universidad y también un espacio en desempeñar redes como APRU, la que usted dirige, en un momento en que efectivamente la cooperación científica y la educación necesitan más que nunca. Así que, digamos, eso es un poco lo que quería comentar. A continuación, abrimos un breve espacio para preguntas del público. Hay una gran audiencia. Podemos aprovechar de compartir y profundizar algunos elementos que nos presentó el profesor. La idea es que levanten la mano y pueden indicar su nombre, también su afiliación y plantear la pregunta. Tenemos tiempo para 3 preguntas. Tenemos un par de micrófonos que podemos compartir para que le puedan plantear las preguntas al profesor. Tenemos una acá.
My name is Camilo Gomez. I'm from this university I study math engineering. My question is, could you explain a little more this concept about global citizenship and how it relates with the Chilean citizenship, or how could contribute this concept to this society?
Great, thank you so much. Global citizenship is a concept that has seen many different interpretations. Basically, every scholar working in the field is explaining it a bit differently. For me personally, I think the key aspect here is if you understand citizen as the member of a polity, and then you expand the polity to be the entire globe, the entire planet, it means a citizen needs to be responsible for that entire community, which is the planet. So that is the point I tried to make at the beginning. I think it's important in the 21st century to look beyond nation states and their sovereign interests, because everything that we do today, our lives, our problems are interconnected. I mentioned at the beginning the different wars that currently happen on the planet. Even if they don't happen in the Asia Pacific, they reach our campuses and all the other problems that I alluded to, environmental problems, also the footprint of humans, etc., everything reaches everybody, right? So I think educating people to be responsible global citizenship, to be global citizens means to be, for one, be aware of that interconnectedness, to develop a mindset that is helpful in resolving those problems. And none of us has a magic wand to solve all the problems, right? It's an effort where the entire community of the planet needs to come together to sit down and find solutions. So this respect and empathy, I think, for other people who are involved in their local problems and are struggling maybe to keep up with their lives is important. And then make the transition to leadership that resonates very nicely with what Rectora Deves mentioned in her speech in the summer. We need politicians, and I noticed that in my home country, Germany, nowadays there used to be a different generation of politicians that were really driven by the vision to improve lives of people. I'm not familiar enough with Chile, so I don't want to comment on your country. But you also see in many countries politicians that do politics for their careers, their career politicians. And I think that is possibly not the right kind of leadership, because it puts their own person at the center, and what should be at the center is the people of this planet. Thank you so much.
I'm satisfied with your answer.
Thank you. Sometimes they're not good answers, right? We can just make attempts to answer questions.
Thank you so much, Professor Schneider. My name is Julián Páez. I am from the Embassy of Colombia. Thanks again, Universidad de Chile, for this incredible time. I wish you all the best in this International Week. Professor, I was wondering, how do you imagine the future of APRU? Let's say the number of universities, the projects that are going to be in the future, 10 years, 20 years. What are the plans of you as an executive and leader of the APRU, and the universities in Latin America that are part of APRU, like the University of Chile, how are going to be in this plan?
Thank you so much.
Vielen Dank.
That's a really important question. And since I took over my position, I have been thinking a lot about what we can do maybe differently. So the idea was, I'll give you maybe 2 or 3 points that I think are essential. So we were created 30 years ago. As you know, after 30 years, some associations tend to be a little bit lazy or stagnant and happy with past achievements. But as I tried to demonstrate in my lecture, the world is now a very different place from when APRU was founded, like 30 years ago. It's a different planet altogether. So this means that APRU needs to rethink how it can best serve the interests of the planet through its institutions. And so one idea, and I hope I gave 2 examples before, is everything we do should have really impact. It needs to change something on the ground. So in the past, and I still think today, we talk too much about many things, and we don't look for how will this actually affect and improve the lives of people. So I think if we cannot make this step, improving the lives of people, then we don't need to exist as an association. So that's why we are looking now into creating projects that have this deliverable, right? That deliver for society. We are currently a network of 63 institutions. We are trying to not to grow much more because, as you can understand, it's very difficult to entertain good relationships with close to 70 member institutions and partners. That translates, as I said before, into 3 million people. You know, you imagine you have all this. What we do is like, when I was appointed as the chair of the search committee said, that's something like being Secretary General of the United Nations. I hope it's not that contentious, but it's certainly a lot of what we do is actually creating consensus across the network. Because we have 63 members from very different regions of the Asia Pacific, and they come to the network with very different national problems, with very different institutional interests, with very different expectations or aspirations for the network. So, you know, we always need to try to navigate that tension. You know, we cannot cater to all the institutions, but we need to try to find some consensus and then translate this into meaningful action in the world. So we hope, of course, and University of Chile, really need to sing praises for your president, for your rectora, has really been incredibly influential. It comes down to institutions that also take a leadership role within APIU and that want to lead by example, right? And so I hope that is something we can continue with the University of Chile. But, you know, in terms of the future, I hope we can exist for more years. You know, as you know, there are many threats also to higher education. There's no guarantee that networks exist, in a sense, eternally. We need to be sustainable, we need to be impactful, we need to deliver to our members. The value proposition is important. But I'm hopeful that if we create more meaningful projects and can really create that educational diplomacy, then we will continue to exist for many more years.
Muchas gracias, profesor, por la respuesta. Tenemos tiempo para la última pregunta. Por favor, con el micrófono.
Thank you, Professor Schneider. I'm Catalina. I work as the network coordinator for PUC Chile. I would like to ask, how does APRU works or collaborates with other networks in the region, such as U21? Okay. Thank you.
That's also a good question. Yes. That's a little bit a delicate question. We have been, you know, because as I mentioned before, some networks are, in the past there have been more rivals, I think, competing for the interests of institutions. We have 5 joint members with Universities 21, so there's some overlap, but of course the networks do different things. We have recently tried to explore doing things together. So I think that's also one of the objectives that I could have added to the previous question. It's certainly helpful. We have been trying to entertain conversations, not just with U21, but also with the ASEAN network in the Asia Pacific and with other regional networks to see whether we can amplify even more the change that we want to create by working with networks. And so one idea would be, like U21 is a global network. It's much smaller than we are, but it has partners in Europe, in Africa, right, in parts of the world where we are not represented. So I think that would be one of the ideas, that we join forces on specific projects and amplify, you know, our work in other parts of the world. But I also must say, this is also an amplification of the level of difficulty, because then you talk with another network with dozens of more institutions. I don't do decisions by myself, but I'm governed by a steering committee, so you need also to have the consensus by, you know, the steering committee that governs us. So I would say that's a goal, that's something we would like to do more, but it's still something we need to figure out a good way of doing it and doing the right projects together. But thank you for reminding me of how important this is.
Muchas gracias por las preguntas. También, profesor Schneider, muchas gracias nuevamente por su tiempo, por su generosidad intelectual y también por su liderazgo en la construcción de esta importante red y comunidad académica en el Pacífico, para que esté, digamos, más integrada y que tenga un espíritu solidario. Bueno, sus palabras en ese sentido nos inspiran a seguir trabajando, y también me gustaría, para comenzar, nuevamente a Pablo Neruda a la conversación. Su trabajo ya 71 años atrás, en su trabajo titulado Una casa en la arena, digamos, frente al Pacífico, escribió un pequeño poema que voy a mencionar y hacer una pequeña reflexión. El océano Pacífico se salía del mapa. No había dónde ponerlo. Era tan grande, desordenado y azul que no cabía en ninguna parte. Por eso lo dejaron frente a mi ventana. Hoy, digamos 71 años después, el Pacífico es el corazón del mapa del mundo. Y tenemos que pensar que estos espacios son fundamentales, no solo para generar resiliencia en procesos complejos los que estamos viviendo, sino que también para ir proyectando este espíritu constructivista que nos ha permitido en los últimos 70 años solucionar problemas complejos. Y en ese sentido, como el Pacífico va a ser el próximo centro, o ya lo está haciendo el próximo centro gravitacional de la economía, del comercio, de la tecnología, digamos, tenemos que mantener ese espíritu. Y lo importante acá, y que me toca a mí percibirlo todos los días, digamos, en mi trabajo, es que observo que, digamos, este océano gigante ha logrado seducir a la juventud. Y cada vez tenemos más estudiantes que entran al pregrado y se acercan rápidamente al Pacífico. Entonces ahí tenemos la esperanza y tenemos también la fuerza necesaria para que podamos sobrevivir, digamos, y navegar y al mismo tiempo después lograr objetivos dentro de esta mirada más turbulenta. Así que muchas gracias nuevamente por venir a visitarnos. Bueno.
Muchas gracias. Thank you so much.